The Knight's Tale. Part 4. Great was the festival they held that day in Athens, and the lusty time of May put everyone so well in countenance. They spent all Monday at a joust and dance, and the high services of Venus, yet, because they knew that up they'd have to get, and early too, to witness the great fight. They went to bed betimes on Monday night. Next morning, when the day began to spring, clattering horse and noise of harnessing echoed through all the hostelries about. Up to the palace cantered rout on rout of lords on palfreys, stallions many a steed. And what device of harness too indeed, so rich and so outlandish, what a deal of goldsmith work, embroidery and steel, bright shields and trappings, headpieces and charms, great golden helmets, hauberks, coats of arms, lords on apparelled coursers, squires too, and knights belonging to their retinue, spears being nailed, and helmets buckled strong, strapping of shields, and lacing up of thong. The work was urgent, not a man was idle. The foamy steeds gnawing the golden bridle, the armorers up and down, and round about, racing with file and hammer through the rout. Yeomen on foot and commonalty come, with pipe and clarion, trump and kettle drum, armed with short sticks, and making such a rattle, it sounded like the blast of bloody battle. The palace full of people up and down, here 3, there 10, in all the talk of town, and making bets about the Theban knights. Says one, he'll win, another, not by rights. Some backed the man whose beard was black and squared, some backed the skinheads, some the shaggy-haired. Said one, there's a grim fellow, I'll be bound. He'll fight, his battle-axe weighs 20 pound. And prophecy went seething round the hall. Long after day had risen on them all. Great Theseus was awoken out of sleep by minstrelsy and noise about the keep, but kept his chamber, a resplendent room, till the 2 Theban knights, to both of whom an equal honor was done, were brought in presence. Throned in a window, giving on a pleasance, sat Theseus like a god in panoply, and all the people crowded there to see the Duke and offer him their reverence, and hear what orders he might issue thence. A herald on a scaffold shouted, "Ho!" till all the noise was quieted below. Seeing at last the people hushed and still, he thus declared the mighty Theseus, "Will, our lord the Duke has in his high discretion considered the destruction and suppression of gentle blood were he to jeopardize the lives of those engaging under guise of mortal battle, wishing none to die. His grace now purposes to modify his ordinance on forfeit of your lives. No crossbow darts, no poleaxes or knives may pass into the lists or be conveyed. Thither, no stabbing sword with pointed blade be drawn or even carried at the side. Further, no pair of combatants shall ride more than one course with spears, descending thence, to thrust on foot only in self-defense. If any man be injured, none shall take his life, he shall be carried to the stake. That is to be ordained on either side, and there conveyed by force he shall abide. And should the principal of either faction be taken to the stake, or killed in action, all fighting shall determine thereupon. God speed you all, go forward and lay on. With mace and long sword you may fight your fill. Now go your ways, this is his grace's will." The people rifted heaven with a shout of merriest good humor, crying out, "God bless our Duke for doing what he can to save the blood of many a gentleman." Up go the trumpets and the melody. Forth to the lists canter the company, as they were bidden to the city verge. The streets were hung in cloth of gold, not serge, and like a lord the Duke began to ride, with him a Theban knight on either side. Behind them rode the Queen and Emelye, and behind them another company, of one or other according to their rank, threading through the city with the clank of hoof and armor to the lists that lay. Beyond, it was not fully prime of day, when Theseus took his seat in majesty. Hippolyta the Queen and Emelye were with him, other ladies ranked about, and round the scaffoldage a seething rout. And westward look, under the Martian gate, Arcite and his 100 knights await. And now, under a banner of red, march on. And at the selfsame moment Palamon enters by Venus' gate and takes his place, under a banner of white, with cheerful face. You had not found, though you had searched the earth, two companies so equal in their worth. Never were two so splendidly arrayed, and there was none so wise as to have weighed which of them had the advantage of his foe, in valiance, age, degree, or strength of show. They were so equal one could only guess. In two formations they began address, and when the roll was called that all might see, their number was not swelled by treachery. The gates were shut, and then the herald cried, "Young knights, now to your duty show your pride." The heralds then withdrew, their work was done. Out blared the trumpet and the clarion. There is no more to say, but east and west. In go the spears in readiness, at the rest. In go the spurs into the horse's side. It's easy seeing which can joust and ride. There the shafts shiver on the shields so thick. One through his breastbone feels the thrust and prick. Up spring the spears to 20 foot in height. Out go the long swords flashing silver bright, hewing the helmets as they shear and shred. Out bursts the blood in streams of sternest red. The mighty maces swing, the bones are bashed. One thrusting through the thickest throng has crashed. There the strong steeds have stumbled, down goes all, man under foot and rolling like a ball. Another on his feet with truncheon pound hurdles a rider and his horse to ground. One's wounded in the body, whom they take, spite of his teeth, and bear him to the stake, as was ordained, and there he has to stay. One more is carried off the other way. From time to time, the Duke decrees a rest, to drink and be refreshed as they think best. Many a time are Thebans in the flow of battle met and did each other woe, and each unhorsed the other. There could be no tiger in the vale of Galgaphy, raging in search after a stolen cub, so cruel is Arcite with spear and club, for jealousy of heart to Palamon. No lion is so fierce to look upon in all Benamarin, and none so savage, being hunted, nor so hunger-mad in ravage, for blood of prey as Palamon for Arcite. The blows upon their helmets bite and beat, and the red blood runs out on man and steed. There comes at last an end to every deed, and ere into the west the sun had gone, strong King Emetreus took Palamon, as he was fighting with Arcite, still fresh, and made his sword bite deeply in his flesh. It asked the strength of 20 men to take the yet unyielded Palamon to stake. Seeking a rescue, King Lycurgus coursed towards Palamon, but was himself unhorsed. And King Emetreus, for all his strength, was flung out of the saddle a sword's length by Palamon's last stroke and sweeping rake. But all for naught, they brought him to the stake. Nothing could help, however hard he fought. His hardy heart must stay there, he was caught by force and by the rules decided on. Who clamors now in grief but Palamon, that may no more go in again and fight? And when the noble Theseus saw this sight, he rose and thundered forth to everyone, "Ho, stop the fight, no more, for it is done. I will be true judge and no partisan. The Theban prince Arcite is the man, and shall have Emelye, won by fortune's grace." A tumult of rejoicing filled tall space. From every throat in such a caterwaul, it seemed as if the very lists would fall. What now can lovely Venus do above? What is she saying, hapless queen of love? Wanting her, while her eyes were filled with mists, and shining tears fell down upon the lists. She cried, "I am disgraced and put to shame." But Saturn said, "Peace, daughter, watch the game. Mars has his will, his knight has had his boon. But by my head, it shall be your turn soon." The trumpeters with loudest minstrelsy, and the shrill heralds shouting frenziedly, were in high joy for honor of Arcite. But listen quietly and keep your seat. See what a miracle happened thereupon. The fierce Arcite, with no helmet on, riding his courser round to show his face, cantered the whole length of the jousting place, fixing his eye on Emelye aloft. And her returning gaze was sweet and soft. For women, speaking generally, are prone to follow fortune's favors, once they're known. She was his whole delight, his joy of heart. Out of the ground, behold a fury start. By Pluto, sent at the request of Saturn. Arcite's horse in terror danced a pattern, and leapt aside and foundered as he leapt. And ere he was aware, Arcite was swept out of the saddle and pitched upon his head, onto the ground, and there he lay for dead. His breast was shattered by the saddle bow. As black he lay as any coal or crow, for all the blood had run into his face. Immediately they bore him from the place, sadly to Theseus' palace. What avail, though he was carved out of his coat of mail, and put to bed with every care and skill? Yet he was still alive, and conscious still, and calling ceaselessly for Emelye. Theseus, attended by his company, came slowly home to Athens in full state of joyous festival, no less elate, for this misfortune, wishing not to cast a gloom upon them all for what had passed. Besides, they said Arcite would not die. He would recover from his injury. And then there was another thing that filled all hearts with pleasure. No one had been killed, though some were badly hurt among the rest, especially the man with stoven breast. As for the other wounds and broken arms, some produced salves, and some relied on charms, herb pharmacies, and sage to make them trim. They drank them off, hopping to save a limb. For such as these Duke Theseus did his best. He comforted and honored every guest, and ordered revelry to last the night. For all the foreign princes, as was right, none were discouraged or in discontent. It was a jousting, just a tournament. Why should they be discouraged? After all, it's only an accident to have a fall. There is no shame in being borne by force, unyielded to the stake by 20 horse. Alone, with none to help, it must be so. Harried away by arm and foot and toe, and on a horse maddened by sticks and noise, by men on foot, by yeomen and their boys. There's nothing despicable in all this. No one could ever call it cowardice. And therefore Theseus made proclamation to stop all rancor, grudge, and emulation, that each side was as valorous as the other, and both as like as brother is to brother. He gave them gifts, to each in his degree, and for 3 days they held festivity. Then he conveyed the kings in solemn state out of his city, far beyond the gate, and home went everyone by various ways, with no more than goodbye and happy days. The battle done with, I may now go on to speak of poor Arcite and Palamon. Upswells Arcite's breast, the grievous sore about his heart increases more and more. The clotting blood, for all the doctor's skill, corrupts and festers in his body still, that neither cupping, bleeding at a vein, or herbal drink can make him well again. The expulsive forces, known as animal, had lost their power to cleanse the natural of poison, and it could not be expelled. His lungs began to choke, the vessels swelled. Clotted was every muscle of his chest by poison and corruption in his breast. Nor could he profit, in his will to live, by upward vomit or by laxative. All was shattered and beyond repair. Nature no longer had dominion there. And certainly, where nature will not work, physic farewell, go bear the man to Kirk. This is the sum of all, Arcite must die. And so he sent for Emelye to be by, and Palamon, the cousin of his heart. And thus he spoke, preparing to depart. Nothing of all the sorrows in my breast can now declare itself or be expressed to you, O lady that I love the most. But I bequeath the service of my ghost to you, above all creatures in the world. Now that my life is done, and banner furled, alas the woe, alas the pain so strong, that I have suffered for you, and so long. Alas, O death, alas my Emelye, alas the parting of our company. Alas, my heart's own queen, alas my wife. O lady of my heart that ends my life. What is this world? What does man ask to have? Now with his love, now in his cold, cold grave. Alone, alone, with none for company. Farewell, my sweetest foe, my Emelye. Oh, softly take me in your arms, I pray. For love of God, and hearken what I say. I have here, with my cousin Palamon, had strife and rancor many a day now gone. For love of you, and for my jealousy. And may Jove's wisdom touch the soul in me, to speak of love and what its service means, through all the circumstances and the scenes of life, namely good faith and knightly deed, wisdom, humility, and noble breed, honor and truth and openness of heart. For, as I hope my soul may have its part, with Jove, in all the world I know of none, so worthy to be loved as Palamon, who serves you and will serve you all his life. And should you ever choose to be a wife, forget not Palamon, that great-hearted man. Speech failed in him, the cold of death began, its upward creeping from his feet to numb the breast, and he was slowly overcome. And further still, as from his arms there went the vital power, all was lost and spent. Only the intellect, and nothing more, that dwelt within his heart, so sick and sore, began to falter when the heart felt death, dusked his two eyes at last, and failed his breath. And yet he gazed at her while he could see, and his last word was mercy, Emelye. His spirit changed its house and went away, where I came never, where I cannot say. And so am silent, I am no divine. Souls are not mentioned in this tale of mine. I offer no opinion. I can tell you nothing, though some have written where they dwell. Arcite is cold, Mars guide him on his way. Something of Emelye I have to say. Palamon howls and Emelye is shrieking, and Theseus leads away a sister, seeking to bear her from the corpse. She faints away. Why tarry on her tears or spend the day, telling you how she wept both eve and morrow? For in these cases women feel such sorrow, when it befalls their husbands to be taken. The greater part seem utterly forsaken, and fall into a sickness so extreme, that many of them perish, it would seem. Infinite were the sorrows and the tears of older folk and those of tender years. Throughout the town, all for this Theban's death, wept man and boy, and sure a wilder breath of lamentation never had been heard, since Hector, freshly slaughtered, was interred in Troy. Alas, to see the mourning there, the scrabbled faces, the disheveled hair. Must you have died, the women wailed, for see, had you not gold enough, and Emelye, no one could lighten Theseus of his care, except his father, old Aegeus there. He knew the transmutations of the world, and he had seen its changes as it whirled, bliss upon sorrow, sorrow upon bliss, and gave his son instruction upon this. Just as there never died a man, said he, but had in life some station or degree, just so there never lived a man, he said, in all the world, but in the end was dead. This world is but a thoroughfare of woe, and we are pilgrims passing to and fro. Death is the end of every worldly sore. On top of this, he said a great deal more, to this effect, with wisest exhortation, heartening the people in their tribulation. In time the thoughts of Theseus were astir, to find a site and build a sepulchre for good Arcite, and how it best might be ordained to fit his honor and degree. And in the end the place decided was where Arcite first met with Palamon, in battle for their love, and there between the branches in that very grove of green, where he had sung his amorous desire, in sad complaint, and felt love hot as fire, he planned a fire to make, in funeral observances, and so accomplish all. So he commanded them to hack and fell the ancient oak trees, and to lay them well in rows and bundles faggoted to burn. Forth ride his officers, and soon return on swiftest foot with his commandments done. And after this, Theseus appointed one to fetch a bier, and had it fitly clad in cloth of gold, the finest that he had, and in the selfsame cloth he clad Arcite, and on his hands white gauntlets, as was meet. He placed, and on his head a laurel crown, and in his hand the sword of his renown. He laid him, bare his face, upon the bier, and wept upon him, pity was to hear, and that his body might be seen by all. When it was day, he bore him to the hall, that roared with mourning sounds in unison. Then came that woeful Theban, Palamon, with fluttering beard and ash-besprinkled hair, in sable garments stained with many a tear. Yet, passing all in weeping, Emelye was the most sorrowful of the company, and that the service to be held might be the nobler, more befitting his degree. Duke Theseus commanded them to bring 3 steeds, all trapped in steel and glittering, and mantled with the arms of Prince Arcite. Upon these huge white steeds that paced the street, on these rode one who bore Arcite's shield. A second bore the spear he used to wield. His Turkish bow and quiver of burnished gold was given to the third of them to hold. Slowly they paced, their countenances drear, towards the destined grove, as you shall hear, upon the shoulders of the noblest men. Among the Greeks there came the coffin then. Their eyes were red with tears, their slackened feet paced through the city by the master street. The way was spread with black, and far on high black draperies hung downwards from the sky. The old Aegeus to the right was placed, with Theseus on his left, and so they paced, bearing gold vessels of a rare design, brimming with honey and milk, with blood and wine. And then came Palamon with his company, and after that came woeful Emelye, with fire in her hand, the custom then used in the obsequies of famous men. High was the labor, rich was the attire, and service at the making of the fire that reached to heaven in a cone of green. The arms were 20 fathoms broad, the boughs and branches heaped upon the ground, and straw in piles had first been loaded round. But how they made the funeral fires flame, or what the trees by number or by name: oak, fir tree, birch, aspen, and poplar too, ilex and alder, willow, elm, and yew, box, chestnut, plane, ash, laurel, thorn, and lime, beech, hazel, whipple tree. I lack the time to tell you, or who felled them, nor can tell how their poor gods ran up and down the dell, all disinherited of habitation, robbed of their quiet, and in desolation. The nymph and dryad of the forest lawn, the hamadryad and the subtle fawn, these I pass over, birds and beasts as well, that fled in terror when the forest fell. Nor shall I say how in the sudden light of the unwanted sun the dell took fright, nor how the fire first was couched in straw, then in dry sticks thrice, severed with a saw, then in green wood with spice among the stems, and then in cloth of gold with precious gems, and many a flower garland in the stir of breathing incense and the scent of myrrh. Nor how Arcite lay among it all, nor of the wealth and splendor of his pall, nor yet how Emelye thrust in the fire, as custom was, and lit the funeral pyre, nor how she fainted when they fed the flame, nor what she said or thought, and I shall name none of the jewels that they took and cast into the fire when it flamed at last. Nor shall I tell how some threw shield and spear, or what their garments by the burning bier, nor of the cups of wine and milk and blood that others poured upon the fiery flood, nor tell you how the Greeks in mighty rout left-handedly went thrice and thrice about the flaming pyre, and shouted as they drove, and thrice they clashed their spears about the grove. Nor yet relate how thrice the ladies wept, nor who supported Emelye and kept pace with her homeward, nor shall it be told how Prince Arcite burnt to ashes cold, nor how the wake was held in the delight of funeral games that lasted all the night. What naked wrestler, glistening with oil, made the best showing in his dangerous toil? I will not say, nor say how one by one they all went home after the games were done, but shortly to the point, for I intend to bring my long narration to an end. In course of time, and after certain years, Mourning had been accomplished, and their tears were shed no more by general consent. And then it seems they held a parliament at Athens touching certain points and cases, and among these they dealt with certain places, with which to form alliances abroad, to keep the Thebans fully overawed. And noble Theseus ordered thereupon that summons should be sent for Palamon, not knowing for what reason ordered back, and still in melancholy suit of black. Palamon came on this authority. In haste, then Theseus sent for Emelye. When all were seated there, and hushed the place, the noble duke kept silent for a space, and ere he spoke the wisdom in his breast, he let his eyes fall where it pleased him best. Then with a sober visage and the still sound of a sigh, he thus expressed his will, the first great cause and mover of all above. When first he made that fairest chain of love, great was the consequence, and high the intent. He well knew why he did, and what he meant. For in that fairest chain of love he bound fire and air and water and the ground. Of earth insert limits they may not flee. And that same prince and mover then, said he, stablished this wretched world, appointing ways, seasons, durations, certain length of days, to all that is engendered here below, past which predestined hour none may go, though they have power to abridge those days. I need not quote authority or raise more proof than what experience can show, but give opinion here from what I know. Since we discern this order, we are able to know that Prince is infinite and stable. Anyone but a fool knows, in his soul, that every part derives from this great whole. For nature cannot be supposed to start from some particular portion or mere part, but from a whole and undisturbed perfection, descending thence to what is in subjection, to change and will corrupt, and therefore he, in wise foreknowledge, stablished the decree, that species of all things and the progression of seed and growth continue by succession, and not eternally. This is no lie, as any man can see who has an eye. Look at the oak, how slow a tree to nourish, from when it springs until it comes to flourish. It has so long a life, and yet we see that in the end it falls, a wasted tree. Consider, too, how hard the stone we tread. Under our feet, that very rock and bed, on which we walk is wasting as it lies. Time will be when the broadest river dries, and the great cities wane and last descend into the dust, for all things have an end. For man and woman we can plainly see two terms appointed, so it needs must be. That is to say, the terms of youth and age. For every man will perish, king and page, some in their beds, and some in the deep sea, and some upon the battlefield, maybe. There is no help for it, all take the track, for all must die, and there is none comes back. Who orders this but Jupiter the king, the prince and cause of all and everything, converting all things back into the source, from which they were derived, to which they course. And against this no creature here alive, whatever his degree, may hope to strive. Then hold it wise, for so it seems to me, to make a virtue of necessity, take in good part what we may not eschew, especially whatever things are due. To all of us, his is a foolish soul, that's rebel against him who guides the whole. And it is honor to man whose hour strikes in his day of excellence and flower, when he is certain of his own good name, and never known in any act of shame. And gladder should a friend be of his death, where there is honor in the yielded breath, gladder than for a name by age made pale, and all forgotten the heroic tale. Then is the time, if you would win a name, to die upon the moment of your fame. The contrary of this is willfulness. Why do we murmur? Where is the distress? If good Arcite, the flower of chivalry, is gone in honor and in duty free of the foul prison of this life, shall those he loved, his cousin and his wife, murmur against his welfare, or suppose he can return them thanks? Not he, God knows. Offending so against him, they offend themselves, and are no happier in the end. So what conclusion can I draw from this? except that after grief there should be bliss, and praise to Jupiter for all his grace. So, ere we make departure from this place, I rule that of two sorrows we endeavor, to make one perfect joy, to last forever. Then let us look, and where we find herein the greatest grief, let happiness begin. Sister, he said, it has my full assent, and is confirmed by this my parliament, that gentle Palamon, your own true knight, who loves and serves you, heart and soul and might, and always has since first he saw your face, shall move you to feel pity, gain your grace, and so become your husband and your lord. Give me your hand, for this is our award. Let us now see your womanly compassion. By God, he's a king's nephew, we're his fashion, no more than that of a knight bachelor. What with the years he served and suffered for your love, unless his sufferings deceive me, he would be worth considering, believe me. A noble mercy should surpass a right. And then he said to Palamon the knight, I think there needs but little sermoning to gain your own assent to such a thing. Come near and take your lady by the hand. And they were joined together by the band. That is called matrimony, also marriage, by counsel of the Duke and all his peerage. And thus with every bliss and melody, Palamon was espoused to Emelye. And God that all this wide world has wrought, send them his love, for it was dearly bought. Now Palamon's in joy, amid a wealth of bliss and splendor, happiness and wealth. He's tenderly beloved of Emelye, and serves her with a gentle constancy, and never a jealous word between them spoken, or other sorrow in a love unbroken. Thus ended Palamon and Emelye, and God save all this happy company. Amen.